What's up, everyone? This is the DCU TV Weekend Wrap, the show where we go over everything that happened in MLS over the weekend and talk about how it impacts DC United. We didn't see any action from the team, but that doesn't mean there's nothing to talk about, so let's get into it. So despite all the World Cup action going on, we did have some good matchups in MLS this weekend. First of all, we saw Philly beat the Whitecaps 4-0. Philly's a team that's been, people have been questioning a lot with a lot of their youngsters in, but they've managed to do pretty well, and their back line is getting stronger and stronger. So it's tough for me to see DC United catching up to them at the rate they're at this point, but you never know. Next, we saw Orlando lose 2-0 at Montreal. Montreal's a team that only a couple weeks ago was only a few points ahead of DC United, and they were kind of our next step to moving up in the East standings. But after their string of wins they've put together, they've been getting better, putting together better performances. They might be out of our reach. NYCFC beat Toronto FC at home in a game that ended up 2-1. This was an interesting game to watch, and also it went to show to me that DC United should have beat Toronto in that midweek game that ended 4-4. Toronto looked good, but NYCFC looked even better despite David Villa leaving earlier in the game with an injury. So it's the kind of thing that as we start to play some more home games in the near future at Audi Field, which I'll talk about later, hopefully the team can start to improve more and put together some good performances that they would be coming out with wins over teams like TFC, similar to how we saw NYCFC do this weekend. So those were the games that stood out to me the most. There are plenty of other good ones to watch in MLS over the past weekend, but those games that I just mentioned impact the standings the most in the MLS East. DC United, having not played, stays in last place at 0.83 points per game. Really, if they want to improve and get better, they have to at least reach TFC, who's currently at 1 point per game. Even more so, if they want to be really competitive, they got to hit 1.5 points per game to have a push by the end of the season at the playoff spot. Chicago is currently the first team out of the playoffs in 7th place, and despite having a few games in hand and obviously points on top of DC United, there's a lot of ground to make up for DC. Granted, a lot of their back half of the schedule is going to be home games in a new stadium, new atmosphere, and the kind of thing that DC United can grow into as they move into their new home. So coming into their next couple games, they have an away game at New England on this Saturday the 30th, and then on Wednesday following, they're playing in LA. And after that, they have a week off before they open up Audi Field. Those away games are important to get some points out of, but more importantly, over the next, I would say, 5-game stretch, they really need to find a way to put together somewhere in the range of 9 points if they want to get out of digging themselves into a hole in last place here. So on to the game against New England this coming Saturday. The Revs didn't play this past weekend either, so they've had as much rest as DC has. Their last game was on the same day as the 4-4 draw that DC played against Toronto. They drew in their last match that day 2-2 versus the San Jose Earthquakes. So that result is telling to me that DC, if they can be opportunistic and take advantage of their chances to score, they definitely have the ability to beat this New England team. When the DC went to San Jose, they won 3-0 pretty convincingly. It was a kind of game where they finished their chances and were able to really show in that game that they're the better team. If they can do that against New England, I would be more than happy. I'll be back to recap the game after the weekend and look forward to more news coming from the channel about the Audi Field home opener and potential new signings for DC United.